Welcome everyone to the Chargers franchise. My name is MrHurriicane. Today we're going to recap the past off-season live stream in the Chargers franchise. But if you'd like to watch the long version instead, it's linked down below. It's 2+ hours, but I'll be recapping it here now. At the end, I also show the undrafted players that I ended up signing. So let's begin the recap, as once we sim to the off-season, of course you see some retirements and players getting cut, along with who won the Super Bowl, and the Seahawks won it this year against the New York Jets. But my main concern was retirements, and I was shocked. Nobody on our team retired. Philip Rivers I thought would for sure retire. He was like 37 years old, but no, he was prepared to play another season. The only thing is, I was ready for Cole Hartman to take over at quarterback. We drafted him when he was 24 last year. He's now 25, and it's his time to take over as our starting quarterback. But Philip Rivers was still under contract, so I had to figure out what we were to do, especially because he has such a big salary. He's been regressing the last couple of years, but there's no doubt that his skills are still those of a starting quarterback. So we had expiring contracts this year for some key free agents like Jeremiah Attachu. We already have a big contract for Melvin Ingram, who is now around 30 years old. My initial plan was that we move on from Philip Rivers, and Jeremiah Attachu takes up some of the salary cap hit that he would have had originally, so I definitely wanted to offer to him. For Casey Hayward, not so much. He's regressing, he's 29. And we have very good cornerback depth thanks to Larry Wilbur's spot on the roster. Hayward is also regressing. Then there is 26-year-old running back Melvin Gordon, who just finished up his rookie contract. He had 3 1,000-yard seasons for us. He's always possessed that big play ability, but I did not want to give him over $5 million a season. Top priority was easily Jeremiah Attachu. He's a very key pass rusher, very good in run defense as well. He wanted a 6-year, $53 million contract. I offered him 5 years, $46 million, and he accepted. So that major contract was taken care of, and the rest I wasn't too concerned about. A lot of them were undrafted players that I offered small 2-year contracts to, and they all accepted those. We had some veterans who I didn't want to keep around anymore, so this was not a very lengthy free agent period. It was just take care of Attachu and let's move on. I wanted to save as much money as I could while keeping Attachu so we could go after some high-priced offensive linemen in free agency. I wasn't going to invest in a running back before I invested in the offensive line. I didn't want a repeat of last year with a struggling offensive line that held back a very talented offense. Afterwards, it was time to think about what to do with Philip Rivers, and I began looking for teams that needed a quarterback. I also wanted to trade him to the NFC, and I targeted the Cardinals, 49ers, and Saints as potential teams to trade to. We'll come back to Philip Rivers here in a little bit. We made it to free agency. I was ready to spend some money if the opportunities presented themselves. I checked on different players who retired here, some big names out there like Drew Brees, who made it to the Hall of Fame along with Larry Fitzgerald and Jason Witten. But Jordy Nelson retires, Brandon Marshall, Andrew Whitworth. I'm surprised though that Philip Rivers is still playing, still in search of that Super Bowl ring. So let's go look at the free agent pool and see how it looks. It was headlined by tight end Delanie Walker, and then Ronald Darby, Eric Armstead, and Melvin Gordon was one of the top prospects as well. There was not a top-tier offensive lineman to hit the market, and I was very disappointed by this because I didn't love the draft class as a whole. The only offensive lineman I had even minor interest in was Brandon Scherff. The top priority was to get pass blocking, but instead there was a pretty good run blocking guard in Brandon Scherff, so I had to go and make an offer because both the run game and pass game have to get better, and Scherff can at least help in a big way with the running game. So I made him an offer that would jump the New York Giants. It ended up being in the range of $14 million over 3 years, which was, I think, a very team-friendly contract. We had all this cap room, and there were a couple players that I could spend it on. Eric Armstead and Grady Jarrett definitely caught my attention. I want better depth along the D-line. I also want to look at the potential replacement for Corey Liuget as he begins to age. I also thought about, what about Delanie Walker? Just on a 1-year contract, because we could easily afford it. and it would add another very talented receiver to our offense. I made a 1-year offer. It was definitely below the other teams, but I still made it. There was Melvin Gordon, and I still did not make an offer. The Colts were pushing heavy for him, and I was ready to move on. I like CJ Prosise quite a bit, and I also saw some running backs that I thought were interesting in the draft. I saw DeMarco Murray get cut during the opening offseason period, but his speed has diminished so much, and he's not the same running back that he was. With there being no tackles worth giving big contracts to, I came back to Casey Hayward to offer him a 1-year contract. I still think for at least one more season he can be a very good slot cornerback. We returned then to Phillip Rivers. I put him on the trade block and then began to look at what teams actually had some interest. The Bills had interest. They're in the AFC though. So are the Dolphins. NFC teams really did not like him. I thought he would be a great upgrade for a team like the Saints. They still did not care. I also put Corey Liuget on the trading block because he's a good player, but his salary is about to get out of control as his age goes in the wrong direction. So I'm trying to see if anybody is interested in a pretty good pass rushing defensive end. He had 11 sacks for us last year. We sim to round 2 of free agency, and we get contracts accepted by Brandon Scherff and Casey Hayward, but declined by Delanie Walker. After that, it was time to gear up more for the draft as the combine numbers were out, and I debuted the backwards billboard that was a complete bust and not worth the time it took to write those names down. But the top player on that board was left tackle Dalen Hoyt from Wisconsin. He was praised in the stories about his flawless All-Star game appearance. He's very athletic, a strong run blocker who can also pass block well. I also had Tyrone Brightful on my board as a very fast safety who had the best coverage out of any safety in this class. Then you combine that with the #1 bench press among safeties. How about left end Antonio Pierre-Paul? I did not know Jason had a brother at Ohio State, but he is the complete package and everybody's overlooking him. B+ power move, B+ block shedding. You can't pass that combination up. I still wanted some offensive line help, of course, and Marcus Kadu was one of my favorite guards. I wasn't sure about taking him in the second round, but he was a pretty good pass blocker. There were some value guards I liked later in the draft, like Eric Downing, who was at least a mauling run blocker, although needed some development with his pass blocking. At running back, you have Courtney Creighton, and given this combination, I'd have to say that he is probably a top 5 player in this draft class, with his speed and elusiveness at 5'10", 202. There was also mid-round prospect Steven Smiley, who ran 4.49 at 233 pounds and put up 28 reps on the bench. Bouncing back to free agency now, we see the top teams for all these big name players. Miami gave a big offer to Eric Armstead that'd be very tough to compete with. The 49ers wanted Tyrod Taylor, so it did make some sense why they didn't have any interest in Phillip Rivers, and it looked like a one-team race for Melvin Gordon. So we directed our attention to some different players like Trey Flowers. I like my pass rushing depth a lot, as you can tell, and so I made a small offer here to Trey Flowers. Then it was time to try trading Phillip Rivers and find a team that we can make a deal with. I tried the Saints, offered Rivers for a 2, and they had very little interest in that happening. It might have taken a 5th round pick for them to accept. So I tried a team that was interested, even if it meant they're in the AFC. And for the same price, the Dolphins had a lot more interest, but it wasn't enough to close the deal. From there, I then offered a swap of first-round selections to make it easier for us to go and get some offensive line help. I wanted to jump from 23 to 11 and then get their 3rd-round pick, and that was very close to sealing this trade. So then I began to add some more value from our side. I threw in a 6th-round pick, and the Miami Dolphins accepted, and their new starting quarterback is none other than Phillip Rivers, as he will replace Ryan Tannehill. We're going to revisit the Dolphins later. They did a very interesting thing in this offseason that I actually liked quite a bit. More scouting here, looking at a safety, Stacey Hodges from Iowa State, a good coverage safety who is only a 5th-round prospect. Good to have options at all areas of the draft. Then blocking tight end, not the most interesting spot on the roster, but one I still look to fill, as I offered a 1-year contract to Nick Boyle, and that was only a 6-point offer. Many in the chat wanted to see me offer to Jay Ajayi, but I didn't see him as an upgrade over CJ Prosise. His trucking is a lot lower, he's not as good of a receiver, and there are the injury concerns. I'm a big CJ Prosise fan, and I believe in his overall skill set. Part of why I traded for him is because I thought he could be a starter if we did not retain Melvin Gordon. We sim ahead then to offseason stage 4. We get contracts accepted by Trey Flowers and Nick Boyle. There is now some trade interest for Caesar Butler, a player whom I had no interest in trading. I checked the offers. There are some first-round pick offers down the road, not this upcoming draft, but I still had no intention of trading him to any of these teams. He's a very key part of our defense. Going back to scouting, the chat was full of comments telling me to go and scout Kendall Treader, and I'm glad that I did. He was a great athlete, tore up the combine, and had a great skill set for both a run stopper and a pass rusher. We also had some stories here about the combine, and one that stood out was that cornerback Corin Haggerty did not have a good combine, but we knew he was an intriguing prospect. This did damage his draft stock a little bit, as I believe he was a first-round prospect before. He was still an early first-round talent, but had early second-round projections. But at 6'4", 209 with 4.37 speed at cornerback, you don't see many players like that. He also had a great 3-cone. So I thought he was one of the most interesting players in this draft class. So from there we went on to the actual draft, and the Cleveland Browns had the #1 pick. And with that pick, they spent it on the top pass rusher in the class, Cornell Ezekiel, a player I obviously liked quite a bit. So we picked at 11, and I wanted to go target a tackle. Thankfully, a tight end went #2 to San Francisco. And then the Giants took top quarterback prospect Barry College from Alabama. You'll want to see his ratings when this draft is over. Next up was the Ravens, who took the top wide receiver in the class. Then Philadelphia took the top middle linebacker. Afterwards, our division rivals. The Denver Broncos took the top defensive tackle. Then Dexter McGowan, cornerback, went to the Bears, not Haggerty. Getting close to our pick here, the Lions at 9 went defensive end, and right ahead of us at 10 went another defensive end. So no tackles were off the board. We had our choice of the top tackles in this class. We could have also selected Corin Haggerty, but I couldn't pass up on a chance to upgrade at tackle. It was just a matter of which one I wanted. Now, Dalen Hoyt did not have the highest pass blocking. That was Trey Ajayi. Ajayi did have lower impact blocking. I ended up going with Dalen Hoyt, who had superstar development and had a set of ratings that should make him a day 1 starter. I don't really care that it says that this is a reach. He is a great player, and he's also going to develop faster than most. Trey Ajayi went 4 picks later to Minnesota. We'll check out his ratings once this draft is over. Next up, the Oakland Raiders made their first selection and selected a quarterback. They had the chance to do that last year with Cole Hartman, and they passed it up. This year, they do get the quarterback they want. So from there, I thought about trading up for Corin Haggerty. He was just such a rare prospect that I wanted to try and get him. It just wouldn't be easy to trade up from 55 overall into the low teens. It would cost us at least all of our second and third round picks. We now had 2 third-round picks, thankfully, with the Dolphins trade, and they took Leo Lett with a 23rd overall pick. Pretty good prototype linebacker. We went down the board in the first round, and the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Corin Haggerty. I did not make another trade-up offer to try and get Haggerty because I knew it would cost us a 2 plus 2 threes. I didn't want to turn 3 potential picks into 1, as I also like Tyrone Brightful a lot. I then began trying to trade up for Brightful. He was the second best safety on the board left, and I'm always worried about these big gaps between my pick and the current pick and then that player getting taken. So I tried trading with a variety of teams, just offering up one of our thirds. I didn't want to trade 3 for 1 in this situation either. We got closer to 55 overall, and I kept changing up the offers, but still could not get a 2 pick for 1 deal to go through. The Bears ended up getting great value at 41 with Courtney Creighton. I believe he was the first running back taken. I kept trying trade offers, they kept getting denied. We had quarterbacks go to Arizona, and another quarterback here went to Miami. And again, I'll talk about that once the draft is over. I still think it's very interesting what the Dolphins did in this offseason. I tried trading with the Vikings just to trade up a few picks. They wouldn't do it, so I stood at 55, and the Raiders did not take the player that I wanted. So all those trade offers were unnecessary, as Tyrone Brightful was still available, and I made the selection. Now, at 71 overall, this is underwhelming, especially when you look at the potential that Corin Haggerty had. But Brightful has good speed, best cover safety in the draft, also physical. There were many in the chat that wanted to see me wait till later and select a safety like Stacey Hodges. It was too late for that, so on to the third round as we get Antonio Pierre-Paul. Great pass rusher, quick development, can stop the run. The interesting thing here, though, is that he's not all that strong or all that fast, but still has all the skills. We had another third round pick thanks to the Phillip Rivers trade. This was our true third round selection, our own, and I ended up selecting Stephen Smiley. I did not like a lot of the players on the board, and I thought Smiley was at least intriguing enough to take a chance on. He ended up having great speed for a 233-pound back. The concern was that he's very similar to Barry Nsekhe. I do think Smiley is a bit more versatile and he is faster, but it does appear to be only a marginal upgrade over Barry Nsekhe at that power running back spot. Later in the fourth round, Antoine Diggs went to the Raiders, a player I had my eye on, but no longer looking at safety. I tried to find the right selection for the fourth round pick and there weren't many I liked. But there was Kendall Treader. I'm not afraid to reach for good players. And check out his ratings. 92 strength, 83 block shedding, 82 power moves, quick development at 22 years old. A great defensive lineman to add to our defense, and we had already selected Antonio Pierre-Paul. That was 5 picks into the draft for us. We still had a few picks to make, as Stacey Hodges went at 124 to the Rams. We then selected again in the 5th round. Unfortunately, I was quickly running out of players that I had a lot of interest in. And just looking at the board and the way it was, I decided it was better for us to just get a pick in the future instead of now. So I ended up trading away this selection for a future 3rd round pick from the Cincinnati Bengals. We still had a 5th round pick to make, however, 2 left at this point overall. And I then looked at the good group of value guards. And some of the chat liked Jack Stemke, some of the chat liked Riol Dahlman. I originally was a fan of Eric Downing, but selected Riol Dahlman because he had such a good combine. He had 89 strength, 83 run block, 76 pass, 82 impact block. He'll have to compete with the likes of Luke Eby and Tavedas Bethel for that backup guard spot, as we have some players who are pretty similar in their caliber. We then had a pick to make in the 7th round toward the end of the draft, but no player I could have selected would provide as much value as a future 4th round selection. So we ended up only making 6 picks in this draft class, and I was worried about giving up a lot of those mid-round picks. If I had drafted Corin Haggerty, it could have easily been a 4 or 5 pick class. Here is Trey Adai, who has 83 pass block but does not have superstar development. So I think long-term Dalen Hoyt is the better player. How about Corin Haggerty? The chat was not going to let me hear the end of this. 96 speed, 85 zone, 80 man. That is such a rare talent. I do regret not trying more aggressively to trade up for him, but I wanted those mid-round players really badly. I still like Tyrone Brightful, however, and we'll see how this all plays out. I was a fan of Marcus Cadu, who had quick development. He was taken by the Saints. Then Eric Downing has very good run blocking, not that great a strength. The Bears took Courtney Creighton, 96 speed, 91 acceleration. I think they have a very good running back there. They also selected more of a power runner, Tyler Wilds, who has that superstar development. Then the Rams selected Stacey Hodges, the player you can compare to Tyrone Brightful. And Hodges was selected around 90 picks afterwards. The Broncos ended up selecting Jack Stemke as he ends up with quick development, so he might develop into a starting caliber guard. The Bills took a quarterback, Gene Catanzaro, with superstar development, but he was not the most intriguing quarterback from this draft class. Our rival Broncos took defensive tackle Stanley Newsome in the first, who should be a very good run stopper in the middle, also can pass rush a little bit. It took strong safety Antoine Middleton. Here was number 1 selection, Cornell Ezekiel, a complete player, great edge rusher, finesse moves, power moves with the speed as well. Excellent player to take at number 1. The Chiefs took Fino Hickson with their top selection, so now teams are beefing up their defensive line against us. The Dolphins took Leo Lett, very good linebacker, and then Kerry Sam, superstar quarterback. So what they essentially did was upgrade short term with Phillip Rivers and upgrade long term with Sam. I like the move there. Rivers is better now, but Sam has the long term upside. At number 2, San Francisco took the top tight end in the class that they hope becomes the next Jimmy Graham or Jordan Reed. And the Giants at 3 took Barry College, the best quarterback prospect I believe I've ever seen in Madden. Eli Manning is now on the trading block. Last year, Packer linebacker Vincent Orchard had 8 interceptions, and they just added a superstar linebacker to put next to him. In the first round, the Raiders selected Brian Tam, their new quarterback of the future. I like his deep accuracy and medium accuracy, but his short accuracy is somewhat of a concern right now. Not my concern, however. The Ravens took a receiver top 5 and a quarterback later, perhaps looking for a new nucleus to build around on the offensive side. The Steelers tried to do the same thing, selecting Derek Foreman, superstar development wide receiver. Well, then they took a quarterback who is maybe the most inaccurate quarterback from this draft class. That is not going to solve your issues post Big Ben. Now let's take a look at the undrafted moves that we made. As you can see the transaction log here. I did sign a running back. We have plenty of running backs, so I made sure to release one. And I cut Daniel Sanders, who was on the practice squad last year. I then signed Darius Jackson from Eastern Michigan, who has good speed, good trucking at 221 pounds. Now, he's not as complete as CJ Procise. He does not have the elusiveness, the moves that go with it, nor the catching ability, but he's still intriguing. I then picked up Cornelius Gunn, quarterback from Illinois. He's got 96 throw power. I want a quarterback to develop. Maybe ditch the Matt Castle, Sam Bradford sleeves though. Morris Whitaker, fullback. We're getting some competition here for Derek Watt, if I decide to keep a fullback on the roster at all. I did not pick up any wide receivers though. I'm not trying to get that any more crowded. I did get a tight end, however. Joey Rainey from Delaware State. Decent speed, decent run blocking, not a great receiver, but he'll get a chance to compete. I signed Denard Rutledge from Cal as a pass-blocking left tackle for the preseason, maybe a practice squad candidate. Then middle linebacker Malik Paul as we try to get some competition for now third middle linebacker on the depth chart, Joshua Perry. I then went to sign Miles Foote, a cornerback from Washington at 6'2", 185. Pretty good speed, agility, and acceleration, and his coverage isn't too bad either. At safety, I picked up Jeffrey Weston from Air Force, who might fit pretty good as a strong safety for us. Nonetheless, more competition. Then I re-signed Jatavis Brown back to the team as we did not have a coverage linebacker on the roster. That takes us to the preseason as we open things against the Indianapolis Colts, which means we will see Melvin Gordon in his new home. I think our regular season schedule is very interesting. We open up Broncos, Chiefs, the Jets who are AFC champions, then the Packers, Bears, Chiefs, Raiders, Texans, Titans, Bengals, Vikings, the Jaguars with Corin Haggerty, the Lions, Broncos, Raiders, and we wrap up against the Indianapolis Colts. We play some really good teams this year, and the AFC at the top is looking strong with the Jets. Then you have the Jaguars. We're trying to make it to that level. Do we have the team to do it? We will find out. Up next in the series will either be the preseason highlights or the top 10 plays of Season 3. I want to change up the format for the top plays to make it more interesting, so I'm going to try doing the top 10 now. Those videos will be on my channel this week, and then it's on to Season 4 of the Chargers franchise. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought of the offseason down below in the comments section. Let me know how badly I missed on not getting Corin Haggerty. Also leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day.